Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 125 based on novel. So let's start. The little girl placed the papers on the ground and planned to dip the brush in ink when Def said, "Don't use ink, just trace the brush over the dotted line. In that case, you can practice for a few times. Let me read your books first, I'll explain them to you later." Hulinga knelt on the ground and traced Def's writings very seriously. "I would like to buy a painting." Hulinga heard a voice speak, and couldn't help being surprised and delighted. She immediately raised her head to see a youth standing in front of the stall. "Young master." This little girl leaped to her feet and pounced into Qin Mu's embrace. Just as he caught her, the little girl transformed back into a white fox to wiggle out of his embrace and coil around his neck. She was in a hurry when she jumped out and overturned the ink which tainted a few papers. Def immediately tidied them up, grumbling, "Linga, you're too naughty, these papers are also bought with money, but now they are dirted." "Grandpa Def." Qin Mu laughed loudly and wrapped his arms around Def without any warning, hugging him forcefully. Def wasn't used to it and tried to break free while replying insipidly, "You've come. Grandpa Village Chief has also come," Qin Mu said excitedly. Def's face blackened and he snorted. "He is also out? Is he here to see me being a joke?" Qin Mu knew his ego was strong and smiled. "Village Chief is in Imperial College. Pack your stall, Grandpa Def, follow me back." Def shook his head. "I can make a living by selling my paintings, I don't need you to raise me. I shall prepare New Year goods in 2 months' time. I will draw paintings of door gods, which will definitely sell." Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He took down Hulinga, who was snuggling around his neck, and stroked her head with a smile. "Linga is learning how to read from Grandpa Def. Do you recognize the words in the books?" Hulinga transformed back into a little girl and smiled sweetly. "I recognize them, it's just that I don't really know their meaning. I've been running here frequently to ask Grandpa Def to teach me." Qin Mu put her down, his gaze bright. He said, "Grandpa Def can't sell his paintings like this. There are not many that know what they are worth after all. Besides, painting and calligraphy are valued in a flourishing period while gold is valued in troubled times. With the disasters in the past 2 years, there aren't many rich people. If you want to sell, you need to use some tricks." He put away all of Def's painting and calligraphy, piling them at one side as he raised his brush to paint. As he did so, butterflies flew out from the paper and flew around the stall. Sparrows then followed out and began to chirp around, attracting the passers-by who clicked their tongues in wonder. Qin Mu continued painting, and more birds started to fly out from the paper. There were bramblings dancing in the sky, and even a huge swan which flapped its wings to fly out. Its wings were 7 to 8 feet long, when spread out, and made everyone exclaim in admiration. Def sneered and said, "Show off. I'm not blind, that frivolous fellow, I have no need to show off like this. Those who know worth will naturally know what's worthy. I won't sell to those that don't even if they beg me." Qin Mu ignored him and another rainbow-colored phoenix came flying out from the paper. It roamed around calligraphy and painting street to attract even more people. Qin Mu raised his brush to draw a door god, and it actually also jumped out from the painting. He had a tall and large body that inspired people with awe, causing everyone to have no choice but to move back. "Your skill is not there yet." Def became angrier and angrier the more he saw and snatched the brush over. He raised it and also drew a door god. Instantly, the awe of a god and a devil burst forth, and caused everyone in the street to move back continuously, as they saw a god of 300 yards standing up. He had red phoenix eyes, dragon beard, as well as a divine blade at his waist that could vanquish all evil. It looked extraordinarily mighty. This is a door god. Def raised his brush, and the door god instantly fell back down. It was still on the painting in vivid detail. Meanwhile, all the butterflies, birds, phoenix, and door god that Qin Mu had drawn changed back into splotches of ink that fell on the ground. Who had the higher skill, and who had the lower skill was clearly shown. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration along with everyone in the surroundings. There were instantly people who came forward wanting to buy the door god. When they said their prices, they immediately blew Def's mind. He had been selling paintings here for over 2 months, and if it wasn't for Hu Linga who had found him, he would have starved to death. That's why he didn't expect for a single painting to be sold at such an astonishing price. Hu Linga also jumped in shock, and immediately went forward to haggle the price. Even if it was actually several times higher than that of the dragon saliva, which had really made them speechless. One painting from Def could earn enough for him to live out the rest of his life luxuriously. Hu Linga sold the painting of the door god and took the money. She then immediately scrolled up the other paintings, and Qin Mu opened his Dao Tai sack for her to stuff them all inside. The two of them looked at each other and blinked. Their hearts were thinking of the exact same thing. Rare commodity was worth hoarding. If they sold too much, it would become worthless. Qin Mu immediately pulled Def away and smiled. Grandpa Def, now that we have money, let us buy some good quality fabric to make a few sets of new clothes for you before eating a good meal. We can meet village chief after that. One more thing. I met a painting path that was completely different from yours on the ship from Carefree Village. What you paint is the world which lets all things walk out of the painting, while the painting path of Carefree Village is a world within the painting. Def was originally not willing to leave with Qin Mu, but when he heard what he said, he was instantly moved. He asked, "World within the painting? There's actually such a painting path? Tell me about it in detail." Qin Mu went to buy good fabric in the cloth shop, and tailored it personally to make a few sets of clothes for Def. He then took out pig slaughtering knife to shave his beard and trim his hair, grooming the old man to be clean and tidy before bringing him back to Imperial College. He then said, "Grandpa Def, if you could join your painting path with the world within the painting, you would definitely be able to take another step forward. Imperial Preceptor asked me to forge Sunshot Divine Cannon, and this also needs Grandpa Def's brush. You will need to first paint the Sunshot Divine Cannon. Grandpa Def will save me the trouble of drawing the blueprint. The structure of Sunshot Divine Cannon is complicated, so if Grandpa Def could draw it into the real world, it would be much easier and simpler to measure it. Making it would be much easier as well." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. Def sold paintings for many months, yet he had not sold anything. Then Qin Mu came and helped him to sell one painting, and the money he earned was much more than what he had earned in his entire lifetime. This made the heavenly painting crown prince sigh ruefully. It was due to the fact that the hearts of people were not like they were in the past. Once he did not have to worry about clothes and food, he had no reason to reject Qin Mu, who was inviting him to Imperial College to help. When Qin Mu came back, he couldn't think about resting. He immediately gathered all hands and assigned them their tasks. With Qingyu, Yu He, and Yu Yun of Little Jade Capital, Dao Master Lin Xian, and 10 Taoists that were proficient in algebra, the algebra experts of Imperial College, the Design Bureau of the Imperial Court, and Heavenly Saint Cult, as well as Village Chief, there were a total of 26 people. Including the Dragon Chileen too, they would be responsible for drawing the pictures from the Golden Book and tidying up the space algebra model. The Dragon Chileen's attainments in algebra weren't low after all, no inferior to those of the old Taoists. The Dragon Chileen shed tears of gratitude. He had finally found a reason to not be on the dinner table, so he naturally worked with gusto. The Golden Book had no need for Qin Mu to get involved, so all his energy was focused on Sunshot Divine Cannon. Wang Muren, Mu Qingdai, and Long Yu were told by Qin Mu to arrange the space algebra model, an array model with the algebra experts of Dao Sect, Imperial College, Design Bureau, and Heavenly Saint Cult. Most of the secretaries from Imperial College's floor of heavenly records were experts in formation skills. They were proficient in spell divine arts and were literally walking library of techniques. Thus they were also invited by Qin Mu. Sunshot Divine Cannon was originally a pupil skill called Sunshot Divine Eyes. It was found by Imperial Preceptor, who had then put it in floor of heavenly records, thus secretaries needed to guide them. Qin Mu interacted with them for several days and mastered the formation skills and structure of Sunshot Divine Eyes, changing them into a sequence of formations needed for Sunshot Divine Cannon before finishing its structure. Def observed from the side. When Qin Mu determined the structure, Def immediately began to paint. Even he who was acclaimed as Art Saint took 5 days to finish the drawing of the Divine Cannon. When he finished painting, he brought the blueprints he had drawn to the outskirts of the city and chose an empty land to spread them out. Instantly, a terrifying 300 yards tall cannon battery materialized. The land it occupied was extremely vast, taking up the area of 66 hectares. It was different from true origin cannon since it didn't have a cannon tube. It looked just like a huge platform. Beside it was 2 frames which stretched out on their sides, forming circular arcs. At the top of each was a thick and solid axle. The 2 axles were symmetrical and not joined together. At the end of each was a semicircular fork and a space of 240 yards. The 2 forks floated a divine eye that was blazing with fire, rumbling from time to time. When the eye opened, a fire beam would burst forth. When the eye closed, it would rotate on the spot. This was the Sunshot Divine Cannon designed from Sunshot Divine Eyes by Qin Mu. Several hundred algebra experts immediately surrounded the materialized drawing and climbed onto all corners of the huge cannon battery. They drew, measured, calculated, and broke down the huge construct into numerous components, recording their structure and length without allowing the slightest mistake. The formation markings on each and every one of the components also had to be measured, so there were a lot of calculations. Qin Mu's design of Sunshot Divine Cannon had enlisted every detail. He had designed the main body of the Divine Cannon, but there was no factory big enough to construct such an enormous Divine Cannon in one go. That's why if he wanted to construct it, he needed to break it down into smaller components and forge them separately before assembling them together. This was the reason why Qin Mu needed so many algebra experts. With all of them working together to measure and calculate, the coordination between them was also a kind of learning. There was no room for error. Qin Mu invited Emperor Yangfeng from the capital, and let him coordinate all the algebra experts. Emperor Yanfeng's injuries had completely recovered, but since they were extremely severe and his divine treasures were still tattered, his cultivation had not yet recovered. He still needed to nurse his health. Qin Mu and Little Poison King Fu Yuanqing had treated him by giving him doses of herbs that were too heavy, tormenting him and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor quite heavily. Even until then, Emperor Yangfeng was still bearing a grudge. Your Majesty, these algebra experts were all invited by me and aren't the subjects of Your Majesty. If something they do displeases you, Your Majesty can't just execute them, Qin Mu instructed. Emperor Yangfeng smiled and said, I'm not those tyrants who like to keep calling for executions, you don't have to worry. The officials from Ministry of Works came along with Heavenly Works Hall Master Shan Yushin having all come back from the front lines. When the war on the prairie had no longer any need for them, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sent them back to the capital. Imperial Preceptor is currently attacking Roland's Golden Palace. When we left, the fight had not yet started, the government minister of Ministry of Works reported to Emperor Yangfeng. Qin Mu immediately summoned all the officials from Ministry of Works and gave them instructions. The government minister of Ministry of Works then reported to Emperor Yangfeng, Supervisor Qin found the 5 manufacturing factories that Your Majesty gave him to be too small and too far from each other. He plans to tear all of them down and build a new factory beside the river. Tear down 5 of my manufacturing factories. They were constructed with real gold and silver. He is splurging so much money because it's not his money. Off with his head. Emperor Yangfeng said in anger. Has Your Majesty forgotten? The factories of our Eternal Peace Empire were designed and improved by Supervisor Qin, the government minister of Ministry of Works said. Emperor Yanfeng's expression softened. He's indeed a capable man. Note down that he owes me his head. After a moment, Qin Mu mobilized the flying ships to tear down the 5 manufacturing factories and move them next to Mud River. Ling Yuxiu's ability to lead and command wasn't weak, so Qin Mu invited her to help coordinate the people constructing the new factory. He then ordered people to move all kinds of divine metals and rare treasures from the treasury to the new factory. Emperor Yangfeng was busy coordinating all the algebra experts, so that there would be no mistake. All his energy was used up there. Some 10 days later, the calculations regarding Sunshot Divine Cannon were completed. All of the algebra experts prepared and transformed their vital qi into all the different components they had noted down. They then pieced the tens of thousands of components together without a single mistake, forming a perfect Sunshot Divine Cannon. Nearby, Qin Mu had nearly emptied the imperial treasury and even requested some black gold, black iron, and black copper from the mines all around the empire. Outside the new factory, all kinds of treasures were piled up like a mountain. The new factory had already been started up, and the new pill furnaces that Qin Mu had designed provided an even greater firepower. Hundreds of huge mechanical giants were hammering the black gold and black iron, piling up the smelted gold, silver, iron and copper orderly. Emperor Yangfeng returned to his senses and summoned the government minister of Ministry of Works over. What's left in my imperial treasury? The government minister of Ministry of Works hesitated for a moment. Your Majesty, there's basically nothing left. All of the materials in the treasury have been emptied out by Supervisor Qin. Emperor Yangfeng walked into the new manufacturing factory and saw the inside buzzing with activity. All kinds of new machinery were activated, and the pill furnaces were blazing to maintain the operations of the mechanical giants. Boilers of all sizes were steaming with hot air while giving off dazzling rays. The amount of medicinal stones the new factory consumes in a day is equivalent to the medicinal stones consumed by a medium-scaled war in a day, explained the government minister of Ministry of Works. Supervisor Qin also designed the energy source for the divine cannon, and they are 56 of the strongest pill furnaces. The number of medicinal stones depleted for one activation will be almost the same as the number of medicinal stones Imperial Preceptor had taken to wage war on barbarian Di Empire. Emperor Yangfeng was dumbstruck. After a moment, he slowly said, "It's not his money that's being spent. Where's Supervisor Qin? I would like to ask him if he feels good about splurging my money." Supervisor Qin brought the princess to have a drink. The government minister of Ministry of Works then added carefully, he said he owed someone a drink and that person had been waiting for many days. There's basically nothing else he can do here, so he might as well treat that person to a drink so that he doesn't owe him a favor anymore. When the princess heard it, she decided to follow after him. A small fox also went with them. Supervisor Qin said that he didn't have any good wine, so the princess went to get some tribute wine from the palace. Emperor Yangfeng was angered. I was invited by him and have to hurry here and there, and look what he's doing, running away to drink wine, and even my wine. He even brought my daughter to spend time to drink and have fun. Off with his head. The government minister immediately said, Your Majesty, Sunshot Divine Cannon is not done yet. Emperor Yang Feng felt very much refreshed. Then note down that he owes me his head first. Supervisor Qin said that the salary can't be delayed. He has already written the list, so may Your Majesty take a look. Emperor Yang Feng took a look and became furious again. So much money. My treasury has already been emptied by him, so where will I get the money for him? Off with his head. Your Majesty, Barbarian Di Empire has been conquered and Wolfstore country is being invaded now. So we will have money soon, the government minister immediately said. Emperor Yanfeng's anger turned into joy and he smiled. Fine, then just note down that Supervisor Qin owes me his head. I can't treat these heavenly workers badly. We will pay them once we have the money. Is there any news from the northern border? Your Majesty, General of Heavenly Strategies has sent report of a victory. They have broken into Wolfstore country's king's courtyard and the ruler has surrendered. General of Heavenly Strategies will stand guard at Wolfstore country while the Crown Prince will be escorting the ruler of Wolfstore country. They will reach here either today or tomorrow. Emperor Yang Feng nodded and smiled. There's a lot less to worry about Yushu than his older brother. Supervisor Qin. Emperor Yang Feng raised his hand. Don't talk about him. Change a person, change to another topic. Grand Chancellor Gu Linwan asked Ministry of Revenue if he could have his salary a month in advance. No money. Emperor Yang Feng sneered and said, Grand Chancellor Gu is always toadying for personal gain. How could he lack money? Lord Gu is really broke. The government minister of Ministry of Works smiled. He spent all his belongings to redeem Junior Protector sword back. I've heard the Saintess of Heavenly Saint cult had brought the sword and asked him if he wanted it back, thus Lord Gu became bankrupt. Furthermore, Lord Gu has also helped with the drawing and measuring of the divine cannon, so he also made a contribution and thus wanted an advance salary. Emperor Yang Feng asked in puzzlement, wasn't Junior Protector sword with Supervisor Qin? How did it land in the hands of Heavenly Saint cult's saintess? Bah, you have mentioned him again, off with your head. I have not lost just the family's fortune. I've lost the entire empire's fortune. Where will I find any money? All of you want money from me, yet I've already sold almost all the things in the palace that can be sold. Only the dragon robe and the dragon throne are left. I really have nothing left to sell. The government minister smiled and said, Your Majesty, once you unify the prairie and the snow plains, the money will naturally come. Furthermore, with Supervisor Qin improving the manufacturing factories, if we forge all kinds of flying ships and machinery to sell to the merchants, money will naturally flow in like water into our treasury. Emperor Yang Feng sighed. Note down that both you and he owes me their heads. I wonder, with whom does Supervisor Qin plan to drink while bringing my precious daughter along? Young Master Shu, have you drank the tribute wine of the Imperial Palace? In Rain Listening Pavilion of the capital city, Qin Mu poured some wine for Xu Xinghua while girls were playing instruments and dancing along to the music. He smiled and said, This is the imperial wine that the sixth princess brought. I rarely drink wine, so I don't know if it's good or bad, but what do you think of the taste? Dressed in a male get-up, Ling Yuxiu looked around with her beautiful eyes while slightly excited in her heart. The one who herds cows actually brought me to a cat house. If father learned about this, he would definitely execute him. This is the most famous cat house in the capital, Rain Listening Pavilion. But it doesn't seem like that erotic place from the legends. Hu Linga and the girls of Rain Listening Pavilion were very familiar, so she had long run away to gossip with her friends. Even though Xu Xinghua had stepped into a place of hardships, he still looked untainted as he enjoyed the fine wine. The wine of the imperial court may be good, but it still can't be compared to the fine wine of my high heavens. It should be the time in the cellar that's not long enough. If Cult Master Qin drank the fine wine of my high heavens before drinking this wine, he would definitely be able to taste the difference. Ling Yuxiu looked at the youth in front of Qin Mu with curiosity. Xu Xinghua was exquisite, as if he was made of jade. He didn't look like a real human. There were no faults to point out in his appearance, dressing, actions, or even words. On the other hand, Qin Mu, who was sitting in front of him, had numerous small faults. His appearance wasn't too beautiful. Even though he didn't look bad, he couldn't be compared to Xu Xinghua. Qin Mu was slightly robust and gave people the feeling that he was full of vigor. Even when he was busy and had no time to sleep, he still seemed to be in high spirits. Xu Xinghua, on the other hand, seemed reserved and steady. He gave off a presence as if he wouldn't be alarmed even if the sky fell, his heart as still as water. Qin Mu was sometimes overly humble and was sometimes overly arrogant. Even though his heart was kind, it was also evil. Sometimes he was dense, yet at other times he could pluck on other people's heartstrings like flowers blooming in spring. Qin Mu was careful when doing things at times, to the point that not one drop of water could leak out, but at other times, he was rough and rushed into things headlong with brute force. He would frequently cause trouble like that. Sometimes he was very clever yet so stupid that he would make people grit their teeth in anger. However, all of this couldn't be used to describe Xu Xinghua. He was like a perfect person that had no flaws. It may be overboard to describe a man as beautiful, but it wasn't the case for him. He was such a person. No matter if it was his enemy or his friend, they would have a feeling of being bathed in the spring wind when facing him. He's so fake that there's nothing true about him. Ling Yuxiu took a glance at the two girls behind him and felt pity for them. She could see their fiery gazes when they looked at him, but it was obvious that they had developed feelings for the wrong guy. For such a perfect person like Xu Xinghua, it was impossible to love them. Even if he did so, they wouldn't dare to accept, because they themselves weren't perfect. They would always feel inferior. This kind of love wouldn't last long. It would merely be an unrealistic dream. When we first met, I didn't know you and I would be enemies. Qin Mu placed his wine cup and said, when I learned of it, I was very upset. We could have become friends, but it's going to be fine as is. I need an enemy like you. He revealed a smile. There aren't many outstanding people like you and me in this world. If we were all friends, that would be disappointing. Ling Yuxiu stretched out a finger to poke him and said in a low voice, the one who hurts cows, be a little more humble. Qin Mu smiled and said, I'm just speaking the truth. Behind Xu Xinghua, Yu Liu smiled. Human Emperor is truly not humble. High heavens is not the world of mortals. Xu Xinghua of high heavens isn't a mortal of your mortal world, so how could you be compared with him? Xu Xinghua shook his head and said, Human Emperor has the right. As the successor of the Hall of Human Emperors who had fought against high heavens for 20,000 years, why couldn't he be compared to me? If you insult him, you're insulting me as well. Yu Liu's face turned red. I came down the mountain to get rid of the new Human Emperor, but I thought Brother Qin was Daozi of Dao sect when I first met you. Never would I have expected you to be that Human Emperor I was looking for. Only afterward did I learn that I had missed a meeting with you. After coming to the mortal world, I have met numerous outstanding people from the younger generation, and even consulted them, but they were all not to my expectation. Thinking back, it's still Brother Qin who stunned me the most, Xu Xinghua said. Qin Mu poured wine for him and smiled. I promised you a drink, and after it, no matter if it's you beating me to death, or me beating you to death, it will still be a pleasant and fortunate event. No regrets will be left behind. Xu Xinghua raised his cup to toast him, and the two of them touched their cups from a distance before drinking everything in one go. Qin Mu sighed ruefully. As overlord bodies, we still have the difference between genuine and pseudo. For you to be able to find me, it's not just a coincidence. Instead, it's the connection between the genuine and the pseudo. You and I are destined to be enemies and not friends. Overlord body. Xu Xinghua was at a loss. So brother Xu doesn't know about Overlord body. Qin Mu pointed at himself and smiled. I'm the Overlord body, you are the pseudo-Overlord body. Between you and I, there's a connection in the unseen world. It's not because you are the disciple of high heavens and I'm the disciple of human emperor that we have to fight to the death. It's because both you and I are Overlord bodies. You are the pseudo-Overlord body and I'm the true Overlord body. So you have to kill me to snatch my fate and become the true Overlord body. Xu Xinghua was left at even more of a loss. It's also no wonder that brother Xu doesn't know about the details, Qin Mu said seriously. Regarding the Overlord body, it's a hidden secret, and not many people know about this. Look, as one of the most outstanding people in this world, you became the disciple of high heavens and I became the human emperor of all things. Do you think this is a coincidence? No. The youth tightened his hands into fists and said with strength, this is the work of fate between the Overlord bodies. Xu Xinghua was flabbergasted. After a moment, he said, I'm an Overlord body. My master Jade Sovereign never mentioned this. Overlord body is the strongest physique. Do you find learning everything simple and master anything when you just learn it for the first time? Before the other four great spirit bodies can even begin to learn something, you have already mastered it, Qin Mu said with a grim face. Xu Xinghua nodded and said in astonishment, so this is the Overlord body. That's right. Qin Mu placed the wine cup down and said with agitation, do you feel that the other people's cultivation isn't as dense as yours? Even with the same divine arts, the power of their divine arts is not as strong as yours. Xu Xinghua nodded again and said, when I was 14 years old, I had no opponents in high heavens anymore. Even when my master sealed his divine treasures, his magic power wasn't as dense as mine. This is Overlord body. Qin Mu said with a sincere gaze. Xu Xinghua muttered to himself for a moment. So this is Overlord body. However, why does Brother Qin say that is the true, and I'm the pseudo-Overlord body? What's the difference between them? His expression was very serious. Qin Mu poured wine for him once again, and smiled. You can't defeat me, so you're the pseudo-Overlord body. Come, as fellow Overlord bodies, let's have a toast. The two people drank their cup in one go, and Xu Xinghua shook his head. How can we know who would win or lose if we haven't fought before? I might be the true one and you the fake one. Maybe the destiny in the unseen world has brought you to snatch my fate to become the true Overlord body. Qin Mu was astonished and scratched his head while saying, there's this possibility too. Come, let's have another toast for true Overlord body. He pushed one jar of wine to the front of Xu Xinghua, while he brought a jar for himself to gulp down with his head up high. Xu Xinghua frowned. Even though he had drunk wine before, he always had his limits, stopping after a taste. He would never let loose and drink to his heart's content. However, Qin Mu had already hugged the jar and downed the wine, so he could only raise his own jar to drink with him. Ling Yuxiu took her finger to prod Qin Mu and said softly, the one who herds cows, you are almost drunk, stop drinking. Qin Mu took a long swallow, already somewhat drunk. He smiled and said, it's rare to meet a person on the same path, so it's natural to get drunk. Sister, fetch some wine from the imperial palace. There's no more. I took the last 3 jars of wine. All the tribute wine was sold by father to get money to fill the treasury. Ling Yuxiu shook her head and added, Even some of my accessories and clothes were also sold by father. Qin Mu laughed out loud. He smacked the jar on the table and rose up while saying, I planned to drink until we were drunk and fight with Brother Shu after we sobered up, but I didn't consider that the wine might run out before we got really drunk. Brother Shu, let's go. Xu Xinghua placed the wine jar down and stood up. Jing Yang immediately fetched a wet towel for him to wipe his hands and mouth. Let's go. The two of them walked out. On the way, Qin Mu turned back to say, Sister Yuna, put it on my tab. Fu Qingyun chuckled and said, Cult Master is joking. Rain Listening Pavilion is Cult Master's property, so what tab is there? Ling Yuxiu's face turned black. So the one who herds cows actually opened a cat house. I thought why this fellow would actually bring me to visit a cat house, but it was because he had opened it himself. She walked out with quick steps, and Hu Linga immediately followed. Beside her followed Yu Liu and Jing Yang, who were carrying a peeper and a jade vase. Clanking came from outside the capital, the sound of the manufacturing factory forging the components of Sunshot Divine Cannon. Qin Mu and Xu Xinghua walked side by side, as they came out of the city near the origin of the noise. Yu Liu and Jing Yang felt uneasy. It was all Qin Mu's men over there, and they couldn't help worrying that he would suddenly give an order for those experts to get rid of Xu Xinghua. Qin Mu led Xu Xinghua over and said, How does Brother Shu view Eternal Peace Empire's atmosphere? Very extraordinary. Xu Xinghua examined the pill furnaces and mechanical giants in the factory, and couldn't help but praise superb craftsmanship. Qin Mu fetched a large piece over and gently stroked the markings on it. He observed the flawless craftsmanship and said, I've spent much care on this divine cannon. I found countless algebra experts and used up all the treasure in the treasury of Eternal Peace Empire. In 2 or so months, the cannon will be done. If you will be still alive by then, you must come and take a look. This divine cannon is used to kill high heavens. Xu Xinghua's heart trembled slightly, and he carefully examined the markings. With a grim face, he then went to check markings on other components. Qin Mu let him walk around freely, as he waited quietly with his hands behind his back. He thought to himself, Your heart got messed up before the fight even began, so you have already lost. Brother Shu, you've still had too few life and death experiences. This video will end here.